this sight just coming before us from the right is what a lot of people have come to this air show just to see. And there, the RV8tors are providing smoke for the Vulcan. She doesn't normally have smoke. An indication of how easy to handle the Vulcan is. He can go this slowly to keep position with these two little aircraft. In fact, they're making more noise than she is. That's Kev Rumans flying. Co-captain is Bill Perrins. Third member of the crew is the Air Electronics Officer, Phil Davis. Now they'll do a little teardrop pattern, which is a sort of horizontal wing over, if you like, to bring them back in front of us. Just hear Vulcan's Olympus engines coming on there. I think we'll hear them rather more loudly later in her display. But it's interesting, I think, to observe that the RV8s were making more noise than the big Vulcan with its Rolls-Royce Bristol Olympus 202 engines, 16,400 pounds of static thrust from each of them. So that's getting on for 70,000 pounds of static thrust in total. She's not using, well, she's only using a tiny proportion of that as we speak. I was saying about Roy Chadwick, the Lancaster designer. He drew this picture in 1946, that's only 5 years after the Lancaster first flew, of the aeroplane that recognisably is this aeroplane today. And even more interestingly, if you stretch it by 3/4 along its length, you get recognisably Concorde, because Vulcan is a predecessor, an antecedent of Concorde. Concorde also had Rolls-Royce Bristol Olympus engines, although rather different ones. Perfect formation there by the two RV8 guys, Alistair Kay and Andy Hill. You just get a little suspicion of Vulcan's engine slightly opening up there. She looks enormous. She's actually not that big. She's about the same size as a small Airbus airliner, an A318, almost exactly, with the dimensions swapped over. She's got a 111-foot wingspan. The Airbus is 111 foot long, and its length and wingspan the other way round at 103 and 105 feet. So she's a similar size to a small airliner, but of course because of that shape, that extraordinary delta manta ray shape, she looks much bigger, and she has this extraordinary presence. I get to watch her regularly because I have the great honour of being her regular show commentator, and I still haven't really figured out what it is about the Vulcan that affects people so much. I've come to the conclusion it's some kind of aeronautical art. It's art in the sky, and it's the presence, it's the noise, it's the feel, the look. So I think fairly shortly the RV8s are going to break off from the formation, and then Vulcan will go into her regular display. We were talking about the Sabre being part of the Cold War earlier. With her contemporary bombers, the Valiant and the Victor, Vulcan had been designed to carry the British nuclear deterrent, and she did so in those days when we all thought that we were going to suffer nuclear annihilation any time. She did so until the Navy took over the nuclear deterrent in the mid-60s. When and she was doing the quick reaction alert that required. She was painted white, anti-nuclear flash, and then when she stopped doing that and became a low-level conventional bomber, they changed the colour to this current camouflage scheme. And of course, right at the end of her operational career, in April 1982, supported by 11 Victors and another Vulcan, Vulcan 607 hit the centre line of Port Stanley runway, and there are the RV8tors departing from the formation with the Vulcan. Vulcan will now come back after that lovely little show, very unexpected from the RV8tors. We'll be seeing them come back after Vulcan has finished. We will now see Vulcan's normal display. So as I was saying, Vulcan 607 flew from Ascension Island in 1982 and hit the centre line of Port Stanley runway in the Falklands. It was the first proper big raid on the Argentines' occupation of the Falklands. They dropped 21 1,000-pound bombs. That's what this bomb bay can carry. They hit the runway with 2, which was about par for the course, because these were virtually Second World War bombs. There were no smart bombs in those days, no guidance of any kind. So in order to be sure of hitting something, you had to drop a lot. So 21 1,000-pound bombs. The extraordinary thing is that this was the longest bombing raid in history at the time. 7,760 miles round trip, which is about as far as from here to Santiago in Chile. And to get there, it took them 18 air-to-air refuelings. 18. Just think of that. And as they were getting back, they very nearly missed their last slot. So they were never sure whether they were going to get home at the end of this extraordinary raid. So here she comes from the right in the hands of Captain Kev Rumens, Co-Captain Bill Perrins, AEO Phil Davies. Your very own Vulcan. See, everybody thinks she's very noisy, but she can tiptoe up on you.
See, we bloody know if you want one, eh?
The man who flew the amazing raid on the Falkland Islands, Martin Withers, is now the chief pilot of the Vulcan to the Sky Trust. He's not flying today. He was awarded a DFC for that. And that aircraft that he took down to the Falkland Islands is now on static display at Waddington, where she was based. So the first Vulcan flew in 1952, so last year she was celebrating her Diamond Jubilee along with Her Majesty. In fact, every air show last year was in celebration of Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee and by kind permission of Buckingham Palace. This aircraft was made in 1960, so she had her 53rd birthday last Saturday. She is manoeuvrable as a fighter. At the Farnborough Air Show, and I can remember seeing this, one of her test pilots rolled this aeroplane. It didn't go down very well, and he was told not to do it again in public, but it was quite capable of being rolled. And she has a fighter-like control stick. Doesn't have a big yoke like most bombers would have. So she really is a bomber pretending to be a fighter. Now you see that bomb bay opening there, the bomb bay doors open, and that is where she carried those 10 tons, 21,000 pounds of bombs. Now it's too far away to see, but if you were to look closely inside that bomb bay, which you can do when she's on the ground, you will see that it is completely covered with the names of people who have sponsored their names being in that bomb bay. There is still a little space left if you wanted to have your name remembered inside that huge bomb bay. You should go to the Vulcan website, vulcantothesky.org, vulcantothesky.org, or please do go and see the people at the Vulcan Village, which is near the control tower. You can't miss it. It's a huge tented area, and they'd love to see you at the Vulcan Village, and they'll tell you how to go about doing all sorts of things to help Vulcan and keep her flying. We've just heard that through something called Operation 2015, with a bit of luck, if we can raise the money, she'll be flying until the end of the 2015 season. Where there was at a time when we thought she might not fly beyond the end of this season because she does require major modification next winter. As she comes by this time, you'd see those bomb doors closing. If you look at them with binoculars, you may just be able to see inside. What she really needs is a full commercial sponsor, and everybody's been trying for years to get that. She doesn't have one, but she does get an awful lot of help from the commercial world. Also, people like Eddie Forrester of Aerobites, very generous. Big support from the Civil Aviation Authority. Somehow you don't expect a big manta ray like that to do those kind of maneuvers. Marshall Aerospace, the engineering authority, lots of other companies give great support. AD Holdings, BAE Systems, Beagle Technology, Cranfield Aerospace, more about that in a moment. EADS, Goodrich, Kearsley Airways, Meggitt, Messier Doughty, Rolls-Royce and Serco. Still costing £2 million a year to run. That's 38,500 every week. Fundraising done by the Vulcan to the Sky Club, quite a lot of it. More than 8,000 members and rising, one of the biggest aviation heritage support clubs in the world. She lives at what used to be RAF Finningley, where she used to be stationed at one time. That's now snappily known as the Robin Hood Airport, Doncaster, Sheffield, or RAHADS for short. She was actually stationed there between 60 and 68, but she lives now in a very sumptuous hangar there, and the Trust runs regular visitor facilities. You can go and see her and look around her. But you have to remember that she's not funded by the government, and she does not belong to the Royal Air Force. And in fact, just as Kev put the power on there, you heard the beginning of the Vulcan Howl, extraordinary noise that is unique to this aircraft. Nobody quite knows why it happens, but it does. It depends on the weather as well. But you can tell your grandchildren you've heard the Vulcan Howl. There's one member, or sort of member of the crew that I haven't mentioned, and that's Kevin Stone, Taff Stone. He's the crew chief, the chief engineer, the man who thinks of her as my baby. 558 is my baby. He was 25 years in the Air Force, and he left to work on the Vulcan project. So it's thanks to Taff that we see this aircraft performing so brilliantly in front of us today. I do urge you to go and pay the Vulcan Village a call, or if you don't want to walk over there, and it's beside the control tower, beside our commentary position, You could contribute to the funds by text. You'd be very welcome. You text to the number 70070 770 70070, and you text VULC 13, VULC 13, plus one more figure for how much you want to give. So it could be 2, 3, 4, or 5. So to contribute £3, you text VULC 133 to the number 770. Here she is for the last pass with her gear down, and wait for the sound as those Bristol Olympus engines spool up. There she goes. Wasn't that absolutely super? So, pay the village a visit, or text the money in, or go to vulcantothesky.org. There's also a Vulcan app for your mobile. It'll tell you what she's doing. And